A huge controversy has racked the CSGO community. The decision by FACEIT admins running Flashpoint Season 3 to replay a game that had already been completed. For some, it was an example of a big org flexing their muscle to get the outcome they wanted. For others, it was a disaster from the get-go and potentially mishandled by the FACEIT admins running Flashpoint. But wherever you land on this issue, one thing is clear. The CSGO community isn't happy, and they shouldn't be. Listen, I'm sure a lot of people involved in this situation regret their tweets, life choices, maybe even more. But you know what you won't regret? Subscribing to theScore esports YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, leave me a comment about how I apparently look like Maggie Gyllenhaal, and that way, when we have fresh content available, you'll see it right away. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. On Friday, May 14th, Ninjas in Pajamas faced Anonimo Esports, a Polish esports organization, as part of Flashpoint Season 3. In case you missed the recent news, the series was also the debut of Device, the ex-Astralis superstar that Ninjas in Pajamas added to their already impressive roster.
Don't get me wrong. Mechanically, Simple is the de facto filthiest fragger ever to touch CSGO, with ZywOo hot on his trail. But in terms of results, accolades, and, well, pretty much every other metric you can imagine, Device takes the cake. It's not even close.
It's fair to say that a lot of people expected NiP to win. But when the time came for the match to get underway on Friday, there was a long technical pause due to a complaint from NiP that they were experiencing severe lag due, in part at least, to packet loss. To really oversimplify this, packet loss happens when some of the data, say between a player's CSGO client and a server, just never arrives. What this could look like is your enemy's positions may not update accurately on your end, your position on the map may be different than it is at the server's end, or you might experience delays in equipping or firing weapons. Ultimately, the results are unpredictable because, well, some of the data got through and some of it didn't. And if enough of it doesn't get through, it's basically an F in the chat boys scenario. Anyways, NiP called for a technical pause and tried to see what could be done about the situation. There was some discussion of changing servers because they were able to connect to their German practice server no problem. And in fact, the FACEIT admin tried changing from the default German server to some of their other servers, but the same problems were experienced by NiP's players on all of those. Eventually, the admin said, look, we've been at this for like an hour, one team isn't having any problems, we have to get the match underway. NiP claimed that due to RMR rules, they weren't allowed to have staff in the room with the players, so they were essentially left alone to deal with this issue. So with that ruling by the admin, the two teams loaded into the default German server and they played the match. And on map 1, NiP actually won it easily.
I think it's fair to say there was minimal resistance here on Overpass, but perhaps for Anonimo the game has just begun. We'll find out when we head to Nuke.
But the second two didn't go their way, Anonimo were declared the victors, and the whirlwind began on Twitter, where Device kicked things off with a tweet that he later apologized for. NiP's CEO and owner also chimed in, saying that this is the last RMR event that Flashpoint should be allowed to host, and this tweet was seemingly deleted. Reactions to these tweets in the aftermath of the loss poured in, but the general sentiment I saw was like, yeah, it sucks that you lost and it sucks that you had these problems, but one, that's not Anonimo's fault, and they waited while you attempted to solve these problems for a pretty long time. Two, the tournament admins, not Anonimo, were the ones who decided that this best of 3 had to go ahead under the current conditions. And three, you actually won a map in dominant fashion, so the stated 30 to 40% packet loss that Device tweeted about seems pretty unbelievable considering the impact that would have on your gameplay. And then on Saturday, NiP filed a complaint about the series to Flashpoint. They submitted proof of the connection problems, which it was later discovered were entirely on Flashpoint's end due to security settings on the FACEIT servers that were being used for the tournament. From a later NiP statement, problem is finally found. Flashpoint security settings were partially blocking traffic from NiP to the Flashpoint game server, therefore confirming it was not something NiP could control and/or solve. Flashpoint is ultimately responsible for the connection issue. So now, after the entire best of 3 was played, Flashpoint admins agree to replay the match, with a best of 1 being played on Sunday or a full best of 3 being played on Tuesday so that the tournament can continue. From there, Anonymo appealed to Valve for a ruling, and seemingly Valve agreed with Flashpoint. Anonymo initially refused to play, and the organization issued a statement with their version of events. They said that they offered to reschedule the match, but NiP declined. They went one step further and argued that FACEIT was being pressured, quote, on a business level by NiP, who obviously has a much larger fan base and organization than Anonymo does. While there's no real proof of pressure besides the tweets, I will say that having your CEO say that the tournament organizer shouldn't host future RMR events is probably not the right thing to do if you want the process to play out fairly. Speaking of pressure, an image that seems to show a Discord conversation with Anonymo's CEO telling a FACEIT admin to keep the rulebook in mind during the technical pause was also leaked. Some people, seemingly including NiP in their statement, have interpreted this as pressuring the admin for a disqualification, but honestly, I think that's a stretch. Flashpoint responded to the Anonymo statement on Sunday and noted that at the time that these problems were happening, there had been no official request to reschedule the match. But come on, did no one on the admin team consider that? One of your teams is literally telling you that they can't really proceed with the match under the current conditions. This should have been something that the admin thought about doing. And even if Anonymo didn't submit an official request, and let's be honest, it probably wasn't their responsibility given that it wasn't their technical problem, according to the Polish organization, one of their players offered it in chat. NiP then responded with a statement of their own on Sunday, the one that I read from previously, which revealed the information about the connection issues, acknowledged that FACEIT admins had agreed to have the match replayed, and essentially said the ball is in Anonymo's court at this point. They also called the Anonymo statement, quote, shockingly misleading, which I assume is a reference to the fact that they said that they were being pressured to replay the series, when in fact, that decision had already been made by the tournament admins, so it was a ruling. And as soon as the rematch had been confirmed, the community noted that there were actually a lot of games that they'd love to be able to replay if given the chance. The takes were pretty funny, but you can also sense the frustration with the situation in some cases. And yeah, that's right. I got the Boston Major into yet another video. Deal with it. Okay, but memes aside, where does this leave us? Early Tuesday, Anonymo issued a statement that they would comply with the request for a rematch, if only begrudgingly. They then replayed the third map, Mirage, on Tuesday. And although Anonymo lost, it was a close 16-14 match that showed that that previous result wasn't just a fluke. The CSPPA also issued a statement before the match that they had been involved in the situation and that the association's players disagreed with the final decision in this case. And in terms of blame, I can't help but think that it's really the admins that f*** this one up. If you aren't willing to let the results of that best of 3 stand, it should never have been played. It should have been rescheduled with enough time for these technical problems to be investigated and solved, especially given that NiP only had problems connecting to FACEIT servers. This is an opinion that Sponge also echoed on the HLTV Confirmed podcast.
The point is, if the server conditions were not good enough, the game should have been called off and rescheduled for an RMR event, right? Like if this was like a broadcast and it was like you needed to hit the timings or whatever, like I'm not saying it should never happen. And I don't want this to open up as an excuse, right, for players just to be able to not play because they like Malik said, they have 1.25 packet losses, like ridiculous.
But if you have the players load into that server and start playing the game, then everybody involved has to agree that, yeah, this is the actual game, and we agree to be bound by the results of that game. Anonymo may have lost to NiP in the rematch, but I'm willing to bet that they won something else too. Fans that want to see them succeed because of the way they were treated. This team could be a lot of fun to follow, And there's nothing like a David and Goliath narrative to get people's emotions running hot if these two teams ever meet again. At the end of the day, the problems here were caused by the decision that FACEIT admins came to initially, as well as the server setup, which caused the connection problems that NiP were having. Flashpoint Commissioner Monte Cristo admitted as much after the rematch. And it really sucks that Anonymous ultimately was punished for that. But whether you think the rematch was fair play, or you've changed your profile picture to this, one thing seems pretty universal. I can't wait to have lands back. I'm trying to power it up, bro. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Again, let's start at the beginning constantly. Like, we can't stop starting at the beginning. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. On Friday, May 14th, Ninjas in Pajamas was set to face off again. I don't know why I said that. Goddamn, Colten's gonna destroy me. Guys, I haven't recorded a video in like 4 weeks, okay? Listen, they got me doing some crazy shit. They don't have me getting in front of cameras. They have me doing other crazy shit that I can't talk about, okay? So just trust me on this. I'm not doing this on purpose, okay? Here we go.